It's the top of the hour by my clock, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Good day or good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome. We're really excited to have you all here. My name is Rebecca and I work on the content team here at GitLab, and I am beaming to you from a very snowy London today. So we are going to give people a few minutes to get started, but just to cover some housekeeping items, I would just like to let you know that today's demo, we're going to be giving a little bit more care and attention to our project management features for GitLab for the enterprise. We will still be going through a lot of the other functionality, but we've had some requests to cover this, so just to let you know what to expect. And I'd also love to get an idea of what everyone is using for project management, if anything. So I'm going to launch a poll now, which you should see on your screen. So if you feel like it, let us know if you're using any of these tools at the moment. So while people are joining us, just so you know, you can ask questions throughout the presentation. We will have dedicated time for them at the end, but go ahead and type them into the Q&A box as you think of them. We have our support lead, Lee, on standby to answer your questions. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can always use the chat to get in touch with us, and hopefully we can help you out. So I'm going to end the poll. I think that was everything from my side. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to you, Joel, to run the presentation. Take it away.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. And as Rebecca mentioned, I am Joel Krooswyk. I am a senior solutions architect here at GitLab in the Chicago metro area. And for those of you who may have seen my name recently, there's a blog post that's been circulating around where I'm kind of complaining about some things that are wrong with DevOps. And so you may think of me as this kind of guy. And I just wanted to, let everybody know I'm really a little more happy-go-lucky than that. That's just, one side of things where I'm trying to analyze what's going on in the market space. So, I'm excited about this stuff. I'm passionate about it. And as Rebecca mentioned, typically I jump from that screen into DevOps and into our world where we're really excited about the outcomes that we're providing for clients with DevOps from what GitLab can do, right? We're excited about the speed we can bring to organizations. And it's critical today. But based on some requests that we've gotten, we're going to back that out a little bit, spend a little more time on the front end and on the project management side of things. So we are going to talk briefly about DevOps and some of those pieces, but we'll stay a little bit more front end focused. Here's why. There's a few key things that you can get from this, okay? When I think about project management in a streamlined workflow like GitLab enables, it's things like giving your work context. So you understand kind of you're building the right things at the right time and avoiding rework. We're trying to build things with purpose. Don't commit into black holes. I've created enough shelfware in my life. I'm genuinely not interested in creating anymore. Okay. So I would love to see things created with purpose. Doing work that matters, right? Actually creating value versus creating TPS reports and status reports and administrative stuff across the tool chain. It's just not fun. And then lastly, enabling data-driven decisions. We want to avoid guesswork. We want to understand that what we've got is good to go. It's ready to release. It's quality code. And so all those pieces come together in GitLab. And so we are capable of going from planning to monitoring, or idea to outcome, or idea to production, whatever you want to call that end-to-end solution. Again, though, we're going to spend a little more time up here today and just touch on the rest of the pieces. And so from that perspective, let's jump right into the platform. And what we're going to do today is we're going to highlight a couple of different projects that I've created. So let me switch over to that. And where I am right now is on a monolithic project. I'm on the landing page. We just landed into this project. And this is kind of one of those big legacy repos. And what I'm going to do today is we're going to walk through how we manage work here and take a look at how we might streamline that work as this monolith moves to a cloud-native world. So let's jump right in. First and foremost, if you're not overly familiar with GitLab, there's three main pillars that I like to point to, or three legs of a stool, if you will. First is the repository. We've got Git in our name. We better be good at source code management. And of course we are. It's one of our core strengths. The second is issues. This is workflow management, right? If you've used Jira, if you've used any of these other solutions for workflow management, you understand how this stuff works. I'll be showing a lot of that today. And then third, of course, is our award-winning CI/CD. And so those three pieces come together. Now, obviously, if you've got three legs of a stool, you need a top. And in order to provide that top, that's where it comes together in the merge request. The merge request is this, it's kind of data hub, center of the universe, gating mechanism that gives us that quality code on the output. So let's start at the beginning. When you're planning, when you're creating things, if I go into my issues, notice I've got a big list of issues that appears here right away. Not overly helpful unless I'm looking to see things by priority or something like that. Far more helpful is to manage them via boards. Now, this is just a standard board. I landed in this development board where I've kind of got some generic columns here of to do, doing, and done as I go across the screen. But I've got boards set up for different purposes. We're doing defect management. We're doing some test management. We're doing some Scrum within here. As a platform, we're kind of methodology agnostic, right? We're enabling you to work how you want to work. We're trying to enable modern ways of working. And modern ways of working is often lean. It's often expedited work. It's often a kind of a mixture of models, right? With more of an agile bent to it. In this particular case, I'll jump in because there have been a lot of questions lately about how do I manage an agile project or Scrum through your Kanban boards. So I'll just give you this as an example. My full backlog is over here on the left. And if I have something like this that I put in place, so I've got a cut line as it relates to a release, I use that to help me understand that I've got to get the work done above the cut line. It's a simple drag and drop prioritization of the work within my backlog column. Now, one of my things that I really like to do is drag those things across into a sprint prioritized column, right? For me, this is pulling out those pieces from that large, nasty backlog that we might have into something manageable. You can also see that I use labels to give myself some sizes. There's issue weights that we provide today, but I want to see it on the card. So I actually brought it forward as a label as well. You can see also all the different labels that we're using to declare whether this is feature work, bug work, or anything else. If I scroll over, you can see I'm using some kind of generic agile terminology here. We've got in progress, completed, accepted. These are various labels that I've applied. And so not only do labels help us group and manage our work, they also provide us a way to create the columns for the work. So it's very label centric. It really simplifies how we work. So in this case, I've created some of these issues. Let me click into one. Here's an example of one that we've created. And here's why some of this is really valuable when it comes time for project administration. Obviously, inside this description, we've got a markdown based description field here. We've got various tasks that have been associated with this. And you can see I can click right into these and complete tasks. I also have an image. This is one of our security scans that ran in our CI pipeline. And I pulled it back in to give an example of the things that we've got to fix in this issue in order to be compliant across all the vulnerabilities. And so this is kind of an embedded dropped-in screenshot, lots of options here for video and everything else. But if you notice here on the right side, I've got a couple of good things going on. One is an assignee. So John is a peer of mine. I've given this, or he's claimed this work, and I actually am going to join him on this. You can have multiple assignees on our issues. This is great. Paired programming, perfect. Lots of stakeholders. There could be 5 people involved here. Notice underneath this too, we've also got an epic associated with this. I mentioned at the beginning the idea of the context of work. What are we building toward? What feature is this a part of? Epics are part of our ultimate product. I'll give you a real quick glimpse into that shortly. But this is the idea that an epic is the parent of the issue. And so this is related to something that's a value-driven feature deliverable, okay? I also have this tied to a milestone. Now, in this case, we're going to talk about milestones in just a moment. I'm using milestones at this level to track my sprints because milestones give me a burn down chart. And anybody doing Agile loves that, right? Below that, if we're tracking time, maybe we've estimated the number of hours to get something done, we can also measure the time spent just to validate how are we doing with our estimation here. Due dates. As it's part of a sprint, I don't need this due date necessarily. But in this particular case, I know this one's got to be done by March 9 because the pipelines have to be clean for me to do the Chicago Trade Show, right? It has to be done. And so that due date was applied to an issue specifically, in addition to tracking an epic against its date and tracking a milestone against its date. So now we've got 3 different dates in flux here that we're going to be tracking against. And then I also mentioned weights, right? We're tracking, this is a size 8 story or size 8 issue. And if I scroll down here, we've got the whole history of everything that happens that's associated with this, and related issues and whether they're open or closed. Related issues is great if we've got things like duplicates or if they're part of a bigger conglomerate. So I think of this like the release here, right? This is a bigger issue. I created a cut line here. If I click in here, what you'll see is that's not just a cut line. It is also my release summary. It's where I can add notes. It has, for instance, down here, all the issues that are part of this release. So there's multiple ways to track releases. This is one of my preferred ways to do it just because of the clear visibility of all of the things that are open or closed at any given time. And if I scroll up here, you can see I can create a workflow that maybe we're establishing as part of this release. That's a mermaid diagram that's been built in, some of our more recent functionality we added. Release planning video and release retrospective videos. This is how GitLab does it, right? This is our videos of planning from one of our recent releases out on YouTube. So my dynamic links are in one place, and it's easily trackable. And I know that everything above the cut line is listed as a related issue. I'm tying the worlds together in such a way where I can really get visibility into what's going on. So the boards themselves, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Let me go back to where we were. If I have work here that's in progress, it's very easy, drag and drop reprioritization, drag and drop move between the columns, and it works just like you'd expect it to, right? Those kind of things are in place today. I'm really excited to say if you look at our directions page, for those of you doing Agile with waiting and you're worried about capacity right now, I don't see a capacity at the top of the column. It's on our direction page. It's in our backlog. It's something we're working toward. I'm really excited about it, right? I'm a big Agile concepts advocate. So those kind of things are in play right now. Let's touch on the milestones. I mentioned milestones a few times. Sprint 3. If I click into this, notice I've got that % complete bar. Here would be my burn down chart. Now, for shame, I have done nothing against this so far. I've got nothing completed. And as such, I better not show this to my manager, right? The reality is, from a perspective of seeing the work get done, I just have a start and an end date here. I've got the number of issues open versus closed, the total issue weights. And notice this is a roll up of all the weights of the work we're doing, and the total time spent. So if this is contracted work where we have to track time spent, this is a great way to get the roll up of how much effort was put into the last 2 weeks of work. And then down here below, you can see things like what issues aren't started or aren't assigned, right? So all my issues have been claimed by somebody for work. And then there's a couple of them closed here. Now, the reason these aren't showing up on my burn down chart is these were completed before the start of the milestone, before the start of the sprint. That's a no-no. It didn't register here. Okay, so we didn't get full credit for that. We got to do it within the time boundary. That's a pretty normal Agile concept. Okay, so there's the milestone thing. Let me go up a level. I talked about how this particular monolith project is part of a larger initiative. So if I go to my groups, and I know the group that I'm a part of here is the Beast. We're trying to manage the Beast, which is a monolith. It's just got a lot of legacy components, and I couldn't come up with a better name than this for it. It has a Beastly subgroup. So that we're at a parent group level right now. There are subgroups we can create underneath this. There are projects we can create underneath this. And you can see I've got the monolith. The Brave New World is the cloud native thing. We'll show that in a moment. A couple of really key things here, though. First of all, epics. Epics only live at the group level. So think of this as your features, your initiatives, your deliverables, the architectural epics, the thing that lives above the issues. And we'll touch on that in a minute. I'll show you some examples. The other thing here is, from an issues perspective, you've got boards that can live at this level. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, if you're doing cross-project management, or if you've ever had to struggle with that before, you know how hard it can be. The views and boards that I can build here allow me to see across projects. So you see some of the cloud native tags on here. Those are my Brave New World project. And so that gives you an idea of what we're working on cloud native right now, while some of these other pieces are part of Sprint 3, right? There's agile sizing and things associated with them. They're part of the legacy. So this is the next level management where I can say, maybe I want to manage a release at this level across the legacy and the cloud native projects, or across 10 different projects if I'm really into microservices and I want to roll it all up into one package, right? This is where I can do a lot of those things. And it's easy to filter some of this stuff. I can not only filter it dynamically here by just doing a quick search for any particular label or keyword, but I can also create and save new boards. So if I go to create a new board, notice that I can scope my board to milestones, labels. I can have my own board for just my own work, right? Multiple boards are in place here, and the capabilities are really, there's a lot of configuration I can do here. The sky's kind of the limit, right? I've actually seen one particular customer who built out nearly 100 boards to manage tiers of work across all these different microservices organizations that he's trying to manage at once. And he's thrilled to death. He said, I got the label system down to a science. This is great. I can see everything and break it down into manageable chunks just through the boards. So lots of capabilities there. Now I'm going to change up real quick because I just don't have enough good examples of some of our newest functionality. The epics, this is GitLab.com. This is us managing our own work and doing epics. I'm going to scroll over here. Notice that an epic is just a date range bounded work. It's a concept of all those issues that are going to be a feature or some kind of releasable value, if you will. Because they've got dates, we project them onto roadmaps. So again, as part of the ultimate product, we've got epics and the roadmaps. This is very recent release, actually, which is part of why I don't have everything built out in my system. But you can see here, there's a lot going on, right? And as a project manager, if I'm looking at this view, I'm going to have a few concerns about concurrent work happening right now. How in the world are we going to track all of this at once? And so we want to be really careful with our context and our constraints for resourcing and for team availability and all that good stuff. And that's really the direction that we're going with this, is once these pieces are in place, we can start talking about what are the resourcing requirements? What are the what if scenarios associated with this? How do we plan better? And so I wanted to show this stuff because I feel it's really pivotal to where we're going at the front end in the project management space as it relates to the portfolio and the planning components, the next level up components. So if you get a chance, I encourage you, go to our direction page, take a look. I pulled it up here real quick just because I'm really excited about where we're going, but this is all public information. We kind of tell you where we're headed with things, and you can see, we're doing more work with the roadmaps, but this is the one I really love. We're going to expand it out, show you issues. There's lots more coming here. Watch GitLab through 2018 as it relates to portfolio management. We're going to bring a lot to the table. All right, back into the beast. Okay, so at this point, we've talked a little bit about work management. We've talked a little bit about how you might add issues. Let me hit the pause button before I put anything in motion. And that is because a lot of times we do hear, well, I've got Jira for this. We use this. That's not going anywhere. Or fill in the blank, right? What some other product name. There are plenty of integrations available out there for doing other issue management and having GitLab support that. Jira is the most common one. That's why I want to mention it here. It's one of those things where we can work with Jira in a very nice way. So, don't write it off just because you say, well, we're not going to do issue management here. The other thing is, where does this stuff come from, right? If your issues aren't being managed elsewhere, where are they coming from? Is it idea managers? Is it Slack? Is it Mattermost? Is it some other site? A lot of this stuff, I'm thinking Slack in particular, if we got a good idea, we can just / command something and create an issue within GitLab. The integrations are out there, they exist, they make that easy. And so I want to quickly mention those things because from an ecosystem tie-in perspective, yes, we can do it all, but we don't have to replace it all right out of the gates and make everything a mess, right? So it's one of the things, if you're thinking about GitLab, just kind of consider where would it fit in your ecosystem as we're talking about this today. All right, so I have a whole series of things here that we're working on. Let's go to the beast. Let's dig back into the monolith. We'll go back to the boards that we were working from, and let's grab something on the Scrum board and put it in motion. Here's one I just put in progress this morning. We want to reduce the page render time by 30%. So let's do some work against this. From here, I can create a merge request. Now, two things happen when I do that, when I click this. One, it does create a merge request for me. But two, it also gives some automation to the issue closure. Okay, so it's going to close issue number 14. We're trying to limit the number of clicks you have to give in order to get things done. It also created a branch that we can work from. And so we've got the ball rolling here. If I click on this branch and make a change, we can start to fill this merge request with some really good stuff. So if I go into the server.rb file here, I've got some Ruby code. Hello world from the monolith. I think I'm going to add an exclamation point to that. And we'll add that as the message. And a bang. And we'll commit this. Okay. Now, one of the things that I love about GitLab is the fact that I'm not a big command line guy. I know a lot of people still are. I spent too much time staring at the black with the orange or green or white letters. And so I love the idea that I've got a built-in editor here. I also love the idea that we have a web IDE that just went into a beta. So it's here. I had it enabled, and it's not here today because I need to turn that preference back on, apparently. However, it's really exciting. There is a fully functional web IDE now as part of GitLab Ultimate. And so because of that, we have a lot more options as it relates to collaboration in coding. There's so many things that we can do and so many places we can go with the UI. It's a great thing. All right, back to that merge request. A couple things have happened. First of all, my pipeline kicked off and ran already. Notice that I now have the option to get an approval. We've made a change. The merge button is grayed out because A, it's work in process, and B, there is no approval in place yet. So there's lots of things I got to do in order to get this to be mergeable code. Notice here too, we're running this with Prometheus is grabbing some metrics for us. I'm showing that we increase the usage of our memory here. So we're getting some of this metrics, some of this data coming back to help us make those data-driven decisions I mentioned earlier. The pipeline is actually defined in our repository. So we use a GitLab CI YAML file to define stages such as build, test, doc, and review, and all the jobs that will be part of that. So each of these jobs is defined as part of a stage. They run concurrently on some auto-scaling runners that really help you with the speed thing, right? This ran really fast. I was really pleased with the speed at which I got this to run today. And hello from the monolith. So from a project management perspective, think about your stakeholders for a minute. I spun up a temporary environment within the merge request. So before this thing gets merged in, the key stakeholders can take a look at this and say, yeah, that's what I wanted. That's perfect. We built the right thing. Or before we go in too deep, we can cause we can cause a ruckus, basically, right? We can interrupt the flow and say, no, this is not what we were trying to do. The customer doesn't want this thing. All right, so you kind of get the idea where this is going. Let me give you a little better view of where we're taking this thing. Okay, so this here is a mock-up that we've been using of a merge request. And it's something that just shows you all the data that we're pulling back. So for instance, the pipeline passed, and here's my code coverage, 52%, right? So we've got a validation that the summary of the tests is here. We passed the tests. There's no code quality changes from the code climate report. Security tests, we've got vulnerabilities. So we've got DAST, we've got SAST. Again, as part of GitLab Ultimate, there are security parameters in place. We've got Gymnasium vulnerability scans. We've got DAST, we've got SAST, we've got SAST container looking into the containers to make sure they're secure. Performance as it relates to browser testing. All of these pieces are there. And of course, we've got some other vulnerability components coming in. So lots of different things happening here, lots of different things coming as well as it relates to this merge request. It's becoming the data hub, the center of the universe as it relates to GitLab, because we want to make those intelligent decisions. So I'm going to move back to a different one that I ran. Okay, you can see there's a kind of this historical view here. I can see what I've done in the past, my legacy branches. This one's still open. There's a number of them that have already been merged. What's nice about these is the traceability, the auditability of them. I know what was required. I know who was required. I know what changes were made, right? If I click into that one real quick again, apologies for the extra clicking around. I can actually click in and see the changes that I made. And in this case, we added the code on the right has that added exclamation point. And if I'm a reviewer, I can say, hey, you know what? I like that. And I can comment on it. Two different things. I talked about gating real quick. From a gating perspective, making sure quality code goes out. When we're looking at things like reviewing and we're looking at things like approvals, I can have a setting in place for if the pipeline doesn't pass, don't let it go. Okay, it's that simple. That's a simple gating mechanism. A more complex one is if we start a discussion related to any code change, we need to be able to resolve that, and then we can merge the code. So it kind of forces us to go through a code review process and make sure that there's no open discussions. Because if this comment was a little more complex, say, oh my goodness, there's a security issue here, this looks like it's going to open up a hole for something, or maybe it's as simple as that's not corporate color code. It doesn't matter what it is, it's probably important enough to resolve correctly. And so all those discussions get listed over here after we start them. It's very easy for us to go through the comments, the history, see who was involved, and make sure that everybody buys in and signs off concurrently, right? We can all work in this together, whether we're product owners, whether we're Scrum Masters, whether we are UX, quality, security, it doesn't matter. This is the point of concurrency. This is the point where we come together and collaborate and get stuff done. Now that pipeline I showed you, there's a lot of stuff that can come out of that. Let me give you a quick glance into an operational view. So here you can see I'm managing production blue, production green, staging environments. I've got virtual machines running here. There's a lot of different environments that I'm deploying to as part of my pipelines. And what I've done is the pipeline runs automatically up to that point of staging, but everything else is manual. And so I've got the opportunity to manually deploy to Blue or Canary. So these are some different Kubernetes pods and things I've got running here. So you see I can deploy to Canary as part of the premium product that we've got. I can open up my environments and take a look at them. Okay, so isn't it crazy that my Blue server produces a blue background? There's also metrics running on all these things. So I mentioned earlier Prometheus. Prometheus is keeping an eye on these environments for me and making sure that the things that we're doing aren't negatively impacting things. So if I'm committing code a couple hours ago and my memory usage or my CPU is straight up and to the right, perhaps we should revisit that sooner than later. Now, the other thing I mentioned real quick was the brave new world. Let me touch on this real quick for one specific reason. This is where I'm trying to work faster. So I have my issue boards and things, and you saw the roll up into the group level. What's really different here is my pipelines. This is where I have let GitLab Auto DevOps run. So I haven't configured anything for my pipelines. I simply checked the box under the settings that said, yeah, go ahead and run Auto DevOps. And what that did for me is it said, okay, here's what we think is the core. This is the really important baseline stuff. You shouldn't have less than this in your pipelines. So we ran a build. How did we run a build if we didn't know what to do? Well, turns out we leveraged some Heroku-ish technology in the background, and we look at it and say, oh, that is Java, that's PHP, that's Python. We know what that is. We'll build that for you using a Heroku build pack. Test down here uses the Heroku test pack associated with that. So we can run baseline tests as well and make sure that things look okay. We also run a code climate job for you dynamically and provide back the artifact about your code coverage. So all of those pieces are part of Auto DevOps. Again, this is running automatically, dynamically on your code check-ins without any configuration. If you're using the ultimate product, the security pieces come into play. We run SAST. I dynamically deployed to production and ran browser performance tests afterwards, okay? Now, if you were really looking close, you may have noticed that those stages are less than these stages. What's the difference? Well, that was a deployment pipeline there. This one here is part of my merge request and my evaluation environment. So if I had created a merge request and done a full evaluation on my code, notice the front end looks the same, but then it spins up a review app for me automatically. So in this case, it said, hey, I'm gonna create a pod for you in Kubernetes and spin this up for you so you can take a look at what you're doing. Dynamic security. Once the app is running, we can run a dynamic security assessment and check the running code looking again for vulnerabilities. And then after that, we ran a performance evaluation within the browser. So all these different pieces come together and are part of our Auto DevOps functionality. I love to call that out because it's just so different, right? This is an area we focus a lot on, and we're growing this dramatically. And it's really exciting to me that I don't have to think as much about the security of what I'm deploying if the system is thinking about it for me. One of the really exciting things about our recent Gymnasium acquisition is they're dynamic about this. Right now, you can see that I'm getting a failed DAST, right? My DAST job failed, so I need to go in and look at the vulnerabilities. Part of what Gymnasium brings to the GitLab table going forward is the ability to say, before we even ran this, we saw a vulnerability and we tried to patch it for you, okay? So we're moving into an automated flow of that technology. Instead of having to stop and check everything out and lose a few hours, how about if we proactively patch things, right? So again, looking at where GitLab's going in 2018 really does excite me. I'm thrilled about the prospects ahead. Where does this all go? Where does it all lead to? Well, so let's go back real quick into one of my other projects and take a look at cycle analytics. Now, most of everything I've got here is not enough data, and I apologize for that. I don't have a great view of this right now. But what's great about this is we talk all the time about speed. How do you measure speed? Well, cycle time is one key to that, right? And so if we understand how long something sits in an issue state before it's planned, or how long something is in a coding state, a testing state, a review state, we can actually, as we work faster and in this system, we can see these times adjust for 30-day increments, 90-day increments, or we could just look at them weekly. The idea being, this is confirmation that we're spending less time doing testing. We're spending less time reviewing applications. We're spending less time with things sitting in staging and more time with them facing the customer. And it may not seem like a big deal just looking at it on a screen, but from a perspective of actual work, I know of somebody as a client who they, years ago, actually left something on a staging server for 9 months and it never got released. It sat behind a toggle for 9 months. They could not realize the value of that release. And so they lost a ton of money. And the CTO at the time said, this can never happen again. How do we know if we're doing better? And the answer is cycle time. So that's one of the core things that we focus on, and what are the data points that we like to present, in addition to things like the date-driven milestone percent completes, the epic roll-ups, and the like. So with that, I would love to just highlight real quick a couple of other reasons why we see people coming into GitLab as a paid program instead of just the Libre free version. And they're the intangibles, right? I showed you a lot of the tangible feature set things today, but the intangible stuff is things like security. We add a lot more to the security as it relates to push rules and locked files and auditability and multiple LDAP server support with groupsync and all these kind of things, right? It extends your security and your administrative capabilities. Secondly, is just from a scale perspective, high availability, geo performance. So things like nodes that are located in different geographies across the globe. Disaster recovery is part of the last release that went generally available, right? There's a lot of pieces that fit the scale model that are really important to have fully supported. And speaking of fully supported, we provide you the higher availability architecture. We help you with that. We help you with upgrades as part of the support, right? It's a hand-holding live upgrade assistance. Lee's on the call. His organization is fantastic. I love that group. They work with us so closely, and they do provide really great response time. It's one of the things that we see is everybody wants to ask questions, right? There's a lot of complexity in the DevOps world, in the SCM world, in the security space. And having that extra support can be really helpful. So with that, I think we'll pause and open things up for Q&A.
Great, thank you, Joel. I'm really glad you couldn't hear what was going on. There was a fire drill in my co-working space, literally right now. Which is the whole GitLab team works remotely, so these things happen from time to time. But yeah, happy to report that Lee has been on top of the Q&A that has been going on while you were doing your demo. But if anyone wants to submit a question now, we've got time, so please go ahead and send questions in if you have them. But yeah, while we wait for people to send questions in, Joel, if you want to advance to the next slide, I can just talk to people about I think the next, yes. So we have a little survey going just to get your feedback on today's demonstration. We want to find out if it was useful to you. I'm going to chat this link to you now because obviously it's not clickable. But yeah, let us know if this was helpful to you today, or if there's anything that you would have liked us to spend more time on. As I said, the sort of focus on product or project management today came out of a request from a previous attendee. So we do take your feedback into account and use them to iterate on future webcasts. So yeah, please do let us know what you thought of today. Still no questions. So yeah, if there's anything that you think of after the fact, you can always visit about.gitlab.com/sales, get in touch with us that way. And we will be sending the recording to you afterwards. So if you joined us late, or if there's anything that you want to review on your own time, you can do that then. And you can also respond to the email that we send to you with the recording. It's webcasts@gitlab.com. You can always reply to that email address, and we'll get someone to answer your question for you. So I've seen one question come up. Neshem has asked 24/7 free support or paid. Lee, I don't know if you want to take that, being our support lead. Okay, so he's answered in the chat. Talis has asked, do you offer help to install and set up the product on premise?
Sure, I'll use my voice and I'll also answer it there. We do have an implementation specialist team that can help with that, and depending on your company size, they can get involved. And if you have a little bit of a smaller company, you can reach out once you have a contract for GitLab. You can reach out to the support team, and we can help you walk through some things there.
Okay, Anonymous has asked about integrations. Are there roadmaps for integrations with app servers, CI/CD tools like Ansible, Chef, Puppet, etc.? Or what is the GitLab approach to addressing these technologies?
Sure, so I'll dive in there for a quick second. I think that we are operating a little bit above Ansible, Chef, Puppet. You can use those to deploy and manage GitLab. You could also use those in your CI jobs. You can use GitLab CI to modify Ansible, Chef, Puppet things. GitLab CI is really the core component there that would help you do what you want, and it would give you the power to do basically anything. So if you wanted to modify those things, you could do that. So it's one of those things that we aren't explicitly targeting that, because CI is so flexible that you should be able to do what you want using CI.
Okay, and sorry, just to let you know, my colleague has just pointed out to me that the link that I chatted to you is leading to a 404, so huge apologies about that. I'll make sure that the correct one is sent to you in the follow-up email with the recording. So we had a follow-up question from Talis. I think this might have been answered in the, yeah, Joel responded in the chat. Vignesh asks, what are the deployment app servers currently supported by GitLab?
Sure. So we believe in Kubernetes. That's where we're targeting. That's our ideal target. But that said, using GitLab CI, you can deploy to anything. The CI job, you can set it up to basically deploy anywhere. As long as they support, common protocols, you'll be fine. SSH, HTTP, whatever you can use to deploy, you should be able to make that happen with CI. We're targeting Kubernetes because of cloud native. We think that that's a way forward. We think that that will help. So that's a huge component there. So we believe Kubernetes will be helpful as a happy path, but also you have the flexibility using CI to deploy to whatever you want to.
Okay, we have a question from Venkatraman. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you have tools and support for automotive embedded domain, specifically for integration of tools that are required to validate automotive domain standards? For example, MISRA standard.
Sure. So I'm outside of my depth here in the sense that I don't know anything about MISRA standard. But that said, if there are common industry standard tools that you can use and run, then you could absolutely embed those into a CI job, have them run, give you the results you want, pass, fail, warnings, those kind of things that would help you have that clarity. GitLab is really trying to find the happy middle ground of building a great general purpose platform that helps you get from an idea into production with all of the tools that you need, and giving you the flexibility to add in the pieces that your specific domain needs. So it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse or pounding on this drum, but I think that it would handle CI would handle that. And the last one that I see here from Peter, is it possible to deploy into an embedded system? And for me, that comes down to, it depends on how that deployment process happens. If you could do that deployment over the internet right now, then I imagine that yes, you could do it. If you had to do any other type of management to make that deployment happen, that it couldn't happen remotely over the internet, then I'm going to say no, is my off the cuff answer. But you can always engage our team more if you're interested in learning more about how GitLab can work for your specific use cases. We'd love to see what we can do to help you.
Yeah, and if I could add to that real quick, just from an embedded perspective, there are definitely a lot of questions around the embedded space right now. And Lee's right. It depending on the environment and how things are deployed, headless systems that have an easy ingress, those are ideal. Things that become more complicated and don't accept things like bash and shell scripts, for instance, certainly can complicate that model and determine its viability. So it's a regular discussion right now.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions for now. This is your last chance. Otherwise, of course, the contact details on the screen you can use to get in touch with us or reach out on social media. Yeah, if that's everything, thank you so much, Joel, for the presentation, and for Lee for responding to all those questions in the chat. Yeah, thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Bye now.